Yo, another Sunday, another update based on what's going on in my world. I guess Happy New Year, because this will be really Sunday morning, which is New Year's Eve morning. So 2024, where are you at? I feel almost almost ready. I feel like I've been working for the past several years to facilitate this next phase of my work, and you ever get that feeling when you're working where it just seems like the uphill climb is so endless that you can be forgiven for thinking that it's just nothing but climbing forever. But little steps create big movement, not only in things like putting conduits through ditches so you can run Cat 5 cable to a remote location, but also in terms of the writing as well. Last week I had mentioned that I had a bit of a breakthrough with the momentum for the next work. And there's a few thoughts that I had about that since then that I'd like to share. Maybe you'd relate. A part of every process for me includes not only those moments of recognition of what the project may be, but also it's the 2 steps forward, 1 3/4 steps back. Like, I find with this, I'll get on this tangent and I'll think, okay, this is what this is going to be, this is it. And then I'll dig in really hard into that one song, only to stand back from it, to pull my head back from it a few days later and be like, wow, I don't know what that's yielded, actually. I don't know if I can sustain that kind of idea for a whole project. And what it makes me recognize is the value of completing each idea. You might get a burst of inspiration that guides you through an entire song, only to come and realize that, hey, there's nothing about that as a whole that is resonating with me. I finished this song and there's certain aspects of it I thought were really cool, like really cool. And working through the Atmos stuff and then rendering it down to stereo, I recognized that the stereo down mix actually sounds killer. It sounds really good. But the song it's almost like a rabbit hole, and it was a false start in a sense. But the value of it was unexpected in that there was one riff in that song that I didn't anticipate sticking with me as much as it has. And so that became something else. It became another song that actually has value. But I wouldn't have recognized that as being valuable had I not slogged through the original part of it. So, I would encourage you, if you're writing and you're going down a similar rabbit hole where you're like, I wonder if this is cool, and then a couple of days of hard work, you're like, I don't think this is actually working. But if you finish it and get it out of the way, finish it, get it out of the way, finish it, get it out of the way. I was listening to the progress that I had made on a bunch of material last night, and I recognized that how much all those little moments, 1 or 2 days of mining a certain creative avenue, how it compounds. And then when you're able to sit back and listen to your progress, you're like, oh wow, I remember that 4 days of work was really complete. I really put a lot of effort into that. And then when I'm hearing it in context with the other material, I'm able to say, okay, well, that one 6-bar phrase or that midsection or that chorus is actually still in line with this overarching aesthetic that is coming together. I'm finding that the work is splitting into various categories as all these possibilities are starting to open up in the future. I can't really talk too much about it, but I've been developing equipment with amazing companies, and we've been working on these things for like a year, And again, refining them, getting prototypes and refining them and saying, you know, its function for this piece of gear is this, or whatever. So let's take it back to the drawing board and let's change this, and let's change the functionality of this knob, and let's make the cutaway here such that when you're sitting, and if you're really sticking to your ideals and not compromising. I mean, there's a certain amount of compromise that come with working with others that you have to take into consideration. Like, you know, if it is a collaborative effort, there's certain things you're going to have give and take on, or else the project will never get done. But the fundamental parts of it, if you're able to really stick to your objective and say, if you're working with other people's, if you're able to say, the reason why I don't want this to be the function of it to be like this, or I don't want it to sound like this, the reason why is because it makes me feel like that. Or when I'm sitting with the instrument, that thing that you are passionate about is actually getting in the way of what the instrument is fundamentally trying to achieve. Like maybe it's a cutaway or it's a sonic thing. And then being able to find a compromise from that point allows a project to continue to be strong, but also like move ahead. And the same thing with music. Man, I'm rambling today. I feel good though. It's like, I feel good. I feel less confused about everything than I was when I first started these updates. But also, it's like I'm on the launching pad right now. That's what it feels like. I've been working on the spaceship, the Ruby Quaker, for this YouTube show that I was and am planning to do, that is going to display all the gear that I've been working on, and also explain the process of where we're going creatively through the analogy of flying through the universe and going all of these different places. But the more I started working on the spaceship, the more the small details started coming together, and the more I started thinking, well, if I just spend a little bit more time on that before I just rush it out the door, it'll be absolutely amazing, as opposed to just sort of kitschy and cool for a while. And I guess what I'm trying to say is the process of getting the records together, the process of writing these abstract pieces that then go to orchestral pieces that then end up going to this heavier thing and then going to this. It's all like the small steps for this project are adding up to something, you know, I mean, I only use this term just because for emphasis, but first, it's adding up to something that feels monumental. And it wouldn't feel that way if patience wasn't being thrust upon me. You know, like I can't finish a spaceship until I get it lit properly, but I can't get it lit properly until I get, you know, I got a buddy who does cinematic set lighting, and he's amazing at it. So, but he's working, so I've got to wait for him. But in order to do that, then we have to wait for another light, and in order to get another light, we have to do the blah 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 blah. The same thing with the music. The ideas started coming into my head, then I started getting visions for the art, and then I started getting visions for the fonts, and like I've been speaking about. But then it started going in all these other offshoots. And what makes music and art so engaging, I believe, is that you've got a bit of yourself invested in it. So when people are listening to it or hearing it or seeing it, they're seeing the part of you that you've imbued into the process. And it just takes time because you have to figure out where you're at. A couple things started happening when I was working with these guitar companies as well, and amplifier companies and cab companies and effects pedals and microphones and picks and all these things I've been working on. I'm fortunate to be able to like work with these companies so I can really define, like after 35 years of doing what I do, I'm like, this is what I like. This is what I want this to do. This is how I want this to function. That's how I want that to sound. That's how I want this to feel. That's how I want that to look. And then by doing that, it's put me in touch with a part of me that I had forgotten about too. I've spent so much time working in DAWs and with software and stacking vocals and all this, that while working with these companies, I'm like, oh man, I'm a guitar player. Oh wow, I really love heavy riffs. Oh wow, I really forgot for a moment that the foundation of why I started doing this was based on this vision of this monstrous guitar sound, like this like that was the whole thing in the beginning. And somewhere along the line, I forgot that. But that doesn't mean that the other side of the music that I've been writing, which is this really abstract, orchestral, intensely abstract vision, isn't also a part of this. But the uncovering of it all is where the growth happens, and you can't rush it, for one. And there's a couple of realizations this week lyrically that all of these things I'm talking about made me feel as well. Like, I've spent so much time worrying about lyrics. You know, it's like you get that thing where you've made something in the past, maybe you made a piece of work or a piece of music, and then when you go to do the next one, you listen back to it and you're like, how did I ever do that? It's like, how did I ever, I can't do that. That's insane. But then once you get into the process, you realize, oh, it's small steps. It wasn't like you just wrote this thing and then it just turned into whatever, you know, deconstruction or empath or alien or anything, or infinity. It didn't just happen. How it happened is exactly the same way that the Moth is happening. And by talking about it, I recognize that process. It's almost like the only real growth that's going to happen is to be mindful of the process, of this process, I feel. And lyrics were always a conundrum because I got sidetracked when I was doing strapping by saying things flippantly that came back and you know, people were really they misconstrued or they took it out of context, and I was like, oh, I didn't mean that, and oh man, that's an awful way for that to be interpreted. And so since that point, I've been really cautious with lyrics. You know, I don't want to underthink it in case other people misinterpret it. But then you start thinking, well, the whole process of growth, at least this process with the Moth and Axolotl and Casualties and Power Nerd and all these other things that I'm working on right now, the only way I'm going to be able to wield what it is that I'm hoping for these things to represent in terms of sonic power is through self-confidence. You know, the whole thought that your thoughts create, not your reality in a sense. I think that's a little too esoteric for what I mean, but it's like negative self-talk, right? Like if your whole internal dialogue, which mine was for many years, is, oh, I can't do this, or I'm stupid, or I'm a fucking idiot, or I'll never be able to reach the level that so-and-so has reached, and why even try, all that shit. It's like, if you just keep saying that, that's exactly what happens, you know? Also, somebody told me something the other day that was really interesting. They said when a race, or like a jockey for a racehorse, when they were going to do a jump, one of the things that they were taught, or at least this one guy was taught, was visualize before the horse jumps that you're taking your heart and you're throwing it in front of the horse, and then the idea is that you visualize yourself catching it on the other side. And it's almost like you're taking care of yourself in a way. And when all these opportunities started coming towards me, like, there's things I'm dying to tell you that are going on in 2025. Man, it's like just things I've been working for my whole life to achieve, or like starting to, if I work hard enough, I'll be like, I'll be able to pull that off. I'll be able to do that thing I've been waiting to do. And then you start thinking, well, what are you going to sing about? What's your music going to be about? And those old patterns come back, and you're like, these opportunities are too much for me. I can't do this. You know, I'm not worthy of this. But it's almost like the only way you're not going to be worthy of it is if that's what you tell yourself. Like, and so with lyrics over the past week, I had a moment where I was second guessing. Like, everything I say seems stupid. It's like bat, cat, hat, mat. You know, your rhyme scheme and the preposterousness of your adjectives. It's like the incredibly beautiful sunrise, or the, you know, it's like everything just seems so flowery and so stupid. And then when I'm listening to other artists and other music, trying to get inspiration as to how people put things together, I think I'll listen to a song, like, why would you make a song about that? And you get really in your head. You're like, why would you sing a song about whatever the fuck it is that you're singing about? That's just, it's so stupid. It's so stupid to sing a song about, like, why would you write a song about that? It's so stupid. And I'm not saying that the concept or the song is stupid. It's just my mind, I was going down this avenue of like, why would you write lyrics about that? Like, what? It's hard for me to explain. It's like, what's your reason for writing that? And so I start thinking that when I'm writing, and then I start writing lyrics, and I'm like, dude, what are you writing about? Why would you say that? And you think, okay, well, what's your intent? What do you want to say? I'm like, I don't want to say anything. You're like, of course you want to say something. Of course you want to say something. Yeah, but I don't want to say anything to have it misconstrued. Well, why would it be misconstrued? Do you think that you're not conscientious of what you're doing? No, it's just the past and blah, 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 blah. Okay, then just write whatever you want. Oh, yeah, but what if you say something that, like, offends people? And I was like, well, you don't go out of your way to offend people. Like, I'm not consciously, at least, like, racist or sexist or whatever. I mean, like, why would you think that something like that would subconsciously come out? Why would you think that you would go out of your way with your work to hurt somebody? And I said, well, what if people seem to be so easily offended? Like, what if what it is that you want to say is offensive to people? And I remember when I was doing deconstruction, that's why I bring this back, I went to a psychiatrist at that point, and they gave me advice that I had also forgotten about. They're like, well, just write it anyway. Just say it. But don't release it. If you listen to it after, and you decide that it's like, oh, it's too much, why on earth would you release it? And I guess I've always been in this mindset of, if I put effort into something, effort equals a need for validation. Like, I put so much effort into this, so I want to put it out so people can see how much effort I put into it. You know, like, aren't I a good boy or whatever? But if what is holding you back from finding your truth, let alone speaking it, but finding it, is the fear of your nature, if laid bare, being offensive to others, then it gives you pause for thought. For me, I'm like, well, I don't think that what I want to say is the opposite of that. I want to say something awesome. I want to say something helpful. I want to say something beautiful and poetic and subtle, but also really overt. And so I took my own advice and I just started writing. And as opposed to consciously trying to think of what the last line was, you know, like, let's say, I went to the store. Well, the next line has to have something about the store. The store was big, or whatever. And then before you know it, you're just like, this is stupid. Why would anybody listen to this? This is stupid. But if you just say what you feel, what shocked me this week is I'm like, oh, you know yourself. What you want to say isn't hurtful. And when you really do hear yourself saying what you say, the need for poetry or metaphor or being a writer or anything, it's almost like it just goes right out the window, because if you just say what you want to say, and what I want to say is, like, you don't premeditate it, it's just, you just sing it. Like, what does that say to you? And then all of a sudden you've got these phrases, and then when you listen back, the next step is like, okay, how do I get over the embarrassment of listening to this? Because it just sounds like that one line. And what I found is like, well, it wasn't actually an embarrassing sentiment. It's just, it was unclear Because what phonetically worked for that second line that you just sang based on impulse may just need to be shifted a little bit. And all it takes is just changing one word, like a to the, or us to we, or I to you, or whatever it is. And then the intent of it changes. And what I found appearing, I was like, oh my God. Yeah, you don't need to think about it. You just need to be brave enough to be yourself. But it's all tied into it. This whole process is tied into that. It's like part of being brave enough to be yourself is to also accept that, if something happens to you that's good or bad, I think the knee-jerk reaction is like, why me? Why is this awful thing happening to me? Or, why is this amazing thing happening to me? But the answer, I think, is just like, well, why not you? What's the difference between me or you or anybody, really? Elon Musk or Shania Twain, or it's just, everybody's just people. But it's almost like the difference is learning to not be cocky about it, but to know your own value, right? I think I spent many years downplaying my abilities, whether or not it was singing or guitar or production or whatever, just because I don't want to appear arrogant. There's that, for sure. When you do see people that are proficient enough at their vocation in order to represent their nature, yet they're wielding it in a way that comes across as cocky. My first reaction is just to be like, oh, fuck that guy. And I think it undermines the work too. Like if the thought, which I have rambled about in the past, of the nature of the origin of music or art being that of a collective unconscious is something that I believe in, then your work to unearth it is only based on your ability to work hard or to really, whatever the work is, whether or not it's self-analysis or technique or figuring out technical problems or understanding new technology or whatever it is. Your job as a creator, the pride that you should feel is for having done a service, in a way, to the music, rather than being like, oh, check out what I'm able to do, And it's like, I've always been very self-conscious of my voice, because when I was a kid, it was like, at Christmas time, my grandfather, who I loved, was very like, you have to sing. And I was just like, I don't want to sing. And I carried that through to adulthood, to the point where I've got a voice that I think sounds really cool. Like when I was tracking these things earlier, I was like, oh, I like that voice. That's really cool. But it's been such a hang-up for so long because of this childhood shit, that it's like, well, the way that you get past that, even the idea of the moth, it's like, how do you go into the cocoon, you've built the cocoon, all right, so what do you do in that? Well, part of it is letting that go, right? Like, part of that is saying, that's not of any use to my objectives, to be self-deprecating based on something that is like childhood stuff, right? It's not as simple as just saying, stop it. You've got to do the legwork to go through it. But it seems like everything is connected, like the art and the music and the process and the technology and the experiences and the opportunities and the failures and the loss and all these things. If you're paying attention to it, altogether define a period of time. And through the act of analysis, whether or not it's musical or personal, the art comes from being able to illustrate that period of time in some way. Illustrate time through music, illustrate space through visual art or whatever it is. And if you're able to illustrate it in a way that is based on not being, to the extent that you're able, deluded about your own progress and your own place and your own needs and your own reality, then what comes out of it is like an accurate representation of that moment of inspiration, the collective unconscious or whatever it is. And then lyrics are like effortless, and music is effortless, but it's this really slippery slope, right? It's like, I like and rely on meditation for anxiety, I guess. It's like, it's like going to the gym for overthinkers. And because I'm a novice at it, regardless of how long I've been doing it, I'm definitely a novice at it. But one thing that tends to happen is whenever I get to the point where I'm actually doing it, my first thought is not surrender. My first thought is, oh, I need to document this. Oh, I'm doing it. Oh, I'm meditating. And then it goes away immediately. And it's the same thing with writing. I got into a space the other week, as I was saying, where I was like, this is the angle. And then when I was in it, my thought pattern switched really quickly to like, oh, this is it. Oh, I wonder what makes this what it is. And then it's gone. And then you're spinning your wheels again. It's this slippery, elusive thing. And it's almost like the only way that you can capture that moment is to not want it in a weird way. And that's where I'm stuck right now. Just because, oh man, I want it. It's fun, it's great. I want it. And it's like, oh, you can't have it then. It's like, so let me get it straight. The thing that makes me so happy I can't enjoy? And it's like, no, it's not about that. It's just that if you're predisposed by it, its content changes. So it's like surfing in a way, I guess. You just kind of have to, you kind of got to just participate in it as a co-conspirator, as opposed to, I don't know, I'm just talking now. But again, we're just starting this. I have no idea where this is going to go. But it's good for me to be able to talk about it, because I recognize through talking about it how this is just, every time, it's this. For years, for decades, it's this. Right? So, perhaps by being mindful of the process, who knows, it might yield just over-analysis that ends in nothing, or it might yield like a true sense of gratitude for being able to participate in it. That's cool. I think it has something to do with that for sure. And I'm so grateful, man, like every day, for everything. The ups, the downs, all of it. Can't wait to tell you what I've been working on, man. And there's just so many things. I can't wait to show you. It's been years of just planning, and I can't wait. And the other night, one thing I realized last night before I let you go, I was listening to my demos last night before I went to sleep. I was lying on the couch and just listening to it. And it fires me up too much, and I didn't sleep. So there's another thing about it. It's like, in order to achieve that sense of grandiosity and scale and power, it's like it has this effect on you. It's like you can't hold it. You gotta just do it. And so I ended up watching to try and calm down. I had a bath, and there's this YouTube channel called Country Life Vlog, where there's a couple in Azerbaijan that picks fruit and makes food and has a pet crow, and that helps. Not as big a fan of them hacking up the lambs, but when they're making the strawberry pies, it's pretty good. So I highly recommend that. This was a long one today. Sorry. Happy New Year. Podcasts are coming up. I'm trying to find a way to make more attractive YouTube thumbnails. I just resent them so much. The fucking... It's like, I hate it. I hate it. So, a part of me doesn't mind the fact that my YouTube content is pretty shit. But we'll see. Maybe they'll have the, oh my god, I shoved 40 hamsters in my anus. You'll never guess what happened next. I grew a tail. Alright, so see you next time, and Happy New Year, and I'm still excited. I went 2 steps forward and I came 1 3/4 back, but we're on the launch pad. I can't wait to show you what's going on. See you soon.